Hello, welcome to year 2 of, how many were here for this session last year? Except for these people. Awesome, well, welcome back. So this was an idea last year, something that I personally had a passion for the whole time we've been doing Mile High Dream, and it's why aren't we doing it at a Salesforce conference using Salesforce? And so the first round, we actually purchased an org, and we were running it through that. And then I kept telling our community group leader contacts at Salesforce, why exactly am I buying a Salesforce product to then have a Salesforce conference that's run by volunteers? And so they were fantastic, and they piloted a program where they give Dreamin' Events actual orgs with licenses for it include Marketing Cloud, account engagement, which is fantastic, and then a Slack workspace. We got that last year. So we were paying for Slack and for Salesforce, and so those are now costs that we don't have to incur as a conference. And so step 1 was getting the products, and then step 2 was like, let's use these products. And that is in itself. Last year we had to migrate from the org we were paying for to the new org provided by Salesforce, and then we spun up the Slack one was nice because they just converted that, so we didn't have to do a whole migration there. But then this year we really hit the ground running, and I won't get into the details because that's what everybody else is for. I just want to say it's been a fantastic journey where we got a lot more planned, and with having said that, Paul Fox is our chief geek. Is that right? Yeah, Chief Nerd. And he's kind of been the tech person behind all of the ideas that we have for how we can bring everything on platform. And so I'll let him tell you how the magic happens. So it's a lot of chemistry, I think, but you figured it out.
Thanks, Chris. Great intro. I got to say, none of this would have happened without Chris, though. I mean, he is the man behind it. I don't know if you can tell by the outfit. He's obviously in charge of things. But we every year do hours and hours of work for free, like every week, just to run this conference to help give back. I mean, we've gotten a lot out of the community. I've been involved in user groups for 20 years now. And it's great to be able to do stuff like this. I hope you learned something from this session. We'll get started. Fun fact, every year after we build the session submission form, I submit a session as a way to test the form after it goes to production. And last year it got accepted by our independent speaker rating committee, and this year this was the session I submitted to test the form. And now we had to make it an actual session, so I hope you like it. Again, this wouldn't happen with all our sponsors, so hopefully by now you've met all of them, but there's some good companies out there with some great solutions, including a couple that we use. Like Chris said, I am Chief Nerd here, thanks to Christine for making up all of our fun titles this year. My day job is VP of Product at Cloud Answers. We do custom Salesforce development and have a few apps on the App Exchange. And then in my free time, I'm either in the mountains or in my woodworking shop. You'll also hear from our full volunteer team that worked on the tech. So Kelly Strauch is with us today. She is currently the certified admin developer at Finalsite. She's also the person that corrects every mistake that I make when we're building the tech stuff. So great addition to the team. Cohn will be going as well. He is currently at Pacific Point, a consulting partner. He is also one of our experienced cloud experts, so hopefully he'll be fielding some of our Q&A if we have some later. And then Jason Murillo, currently working at Cherry Creek Schools. I believe they're still hiring for a couple roles, so if you're looking for something in Salesforce, feel free to talk to Jason. Also, soon to be dad. Girl dad. Child number 2. All right, so first off, who in here has experience with Experience Cloud? Okay, so I'll go relatively quick through this, but for those of you who don't know, Experience Cloud is like the 6th iteration of basically a bunch of Salesforce experiments with building different community stuff. They started as a very basic self-service portal where you could just basically log a support case and get some questions back. No fancy Agentforce or anything like you see on the support portal now. Then they went into like a Java development toolkit, and then they finally moved it native again, turned it into Salesforce communities. It's been quite a journey. So what we're working on right now is actually the latest version. The website that you use for Mile High Dreamin' is even running a beta of the experience delivery solution that actually does like server-side rendering, all hosted by Salesforce. So some great evolution over the years. It still sometimes feels behind when you're comparing it to something that just runs a website, like even just moving from Wix. There are a few features that we lost, but there's a bunch of stuff that we gained. So one of the biggest things, obviously, is it's hosted by Salesforce. Like Chris said, we run a Salesforce conference. We want it to be, showing off Salesforce tech, not just in the sessions, but in what we use to run it. But that also gives us a lot of things that we don't have to worry about. Like I never checked to see if our servers were like getting overloaded because I don't have to do that. Salesforce does all that. So if you're looking for different website solutions, it's something to consider. Especially if you're already doing Salesforce admin, you'll see a lot of stuff that we do today, like sharing roles and flows and things like that, that you're already doing internally in Salesforce, and so you can now do that on your website. For those of you who don't know pricing, there's two basic ways that they price logins. You can do public sites for free. Logins can either be based on like named users or based on how many logins a month. And then some cool tech, custom domains, being able to do Lightning Web Components, custom development. We have both LWR and Aura sites. So we've done both of those, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So before we get into the tech, one more thing is, why do we use it? So first off, as Chris mentioned, we're trying to get people experience with the technology. So not only are we trying to give all the people here at the conference experience and learn things, but trying to get people experience in helping run the conference with getting tech. And so people are learning new things in building this, and we'll get more volunteers to come help out with future conferences and kind of learn what we're doing and keep sharing that way. And to show off things, and also to save money. Like Chris said, Chris basically covered my whole intro, so I'll keep this short. But now that Salesforce covers it, we're not now paying for Wix anymore like we were the past couple of years to run the website. All right, I'll keep going and hand it off to Jason, who's going to talk just a little bit about how we actually managed the projects for all these changes.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to let you know, last year I was in the same seat you guys were. And this year I'm on this side. So just wanted to let you know. But I'm gonna talk about the tools that we used for this whole project, running the event on the new with the tools that we got from Salesforce. So from here we can see a circle like synergy, but in reality this graph should really be like kind of like a mesh where like one element can connect to another one and then connects back. So the flow is not one way, but it can go from one tool to the next and back. But this is just a representation of like the best scenario. But we did use Slack, which was incredibly helpful for managing our tasks and using it as a project management task board. And also you can integrate Slack with Salesforce. So we did do a little integration. When people would fill out a form, we would get a Slack notification. So that was really cool. I never used that tool, but it was incredibly helpful. You can see we also have these other developer tools that a lot of developers commonly work with within Salesforce, like VS Code and GitHub for version control and working on the code. And then we also have our Salesforce cloud, which is production. That's where all of our data lives. And then Experience Cloud uses that data to the appropriate audiences. And then what's really important is that stakeholder feedback. Keep it in a iteration and keep it consistent feedback is very important. But yeah, those are our tools. And then I'll move on to our Pardot forms, how we used Marketing Cloud account engagement in our site. So here I label some benefits of using Marketing Cloud account engagement, which is Pardot, from a marketing perspective and a developer perspective. So for those people that don't know, Pardot is a marketing tool, and it can help track visitor activity and help you convert leads into opportunities, which will help you better convert those leads. And then as a developer, it gives you the ability to customize the form and then have consistent branding across multiple interfaces. It doesn't have to be Salesforce. It could be like an external site that's third-party site, and then you can just insert this this Pardot form, and it'll be consistent across all platforms that you inserted. And I'm gonna give you guys the steps that how we implemented it, the use of Pardot in our actual site. So first of all, we had a problem with our Pardot form not resizing correctly on the actual site after an interaction happened on our site. So these are the steps that I took to customize the Pardot form using a Lightning Web Component. So first we started off by making a Lightning Web Component, and as some of you know, it's a Lightning Web Component. It's made of HTML and JavaScript. So in the HTML, we added a container to hold the Pardot form. So that we added that to the HTML side, and then on the JavaScript side, we added a controller to change the height on the actual Lightning Web Component. And in the HTML is where we're adding the Pardot form link. So it's gonna act like a container. Secondly, on the Pardot form, we edit two places on the form, and the first place is below. This place called below form, which is just content that you put on the bottom part of the form. You can add HTML tags. So we added a script that basically talks to the parent Lightning Web Component, and we do that in two spots. That's because we want the form to resize on form load, and when a user submits the form, which interacts with it. And this next page, I'll show you it in a more visual way. We start with the Lightning Web component, which holds the part.out form, and then also has the event handler to change the container height. And then within the part.out form, there's those two functions. One is below the form, and one is the thank you content, which they trigger at different times, different states of the form, but they also contain the same function to call from the Lightning Web component. And then we add it to the experience site. And then right here, I just added these arrows to show that this function is making calls to that Lightning Web component, which that Lightning Web component then rechanges sizes. But yeah, that's the visual. And with that, I'll hand it off to Sky. He's going to talk to you about flows. So thank you.
All righty. Hello, Salon A. Hey, so who's ready to talk about forms? Well, I'm going to be. So, why use screen flows, particularly as a form tool? Specifically, why did we use screen flows over other form builders that exist within Salesforce or really outside in the Salesforce ecosystem? First off is the native Salesforce integration of Salesforce flows, or in really screen flows. We didn't need to download or integrate with other form builders. It was right built in with the Salesforce. The data that gets captured in the form will be processed when the flow runs. No need to bounce between apps, and the form and the process will really run together. Secondly is that full use of Salesforce logic. Therefore, there's no more points of failures really with in Salesforce screen flows than with other external tools. Data can pass in incomplete, invalid, or late, causing unnecessary cleanup work for really you and me. You can dynamically show, hide fields with component visibility, change screens, and direct users using Salesforce data in real time. Lastly would be the seamless user experience. So I'd say probably one of the most important points overall in all about building out these Experience Cloud site forms would be the experience of your end users. And so as an implementer, I want the best experience for them. And so the form will run seamlessly on your site with little work to actually get the flow on the page and have users interact with it. All right. No need to call anyone out, but I'm sure, I saw a few hands raised when they said they worked with experience sites. So I'm sure there's a few of you here that has put a screen flow on an experience site using this use case that I'm talking about here, and set the context of the flow to run in system context mode, without sharing. I've done it myself, so I'll raise my hand, and I've done that with a couple of clients throughout the years. And so one thing that I've really learned the past couple months is that this is not good. We don't want to expose any data to our outside, to the public. Guest users on the site, by default, don't have object access, and we want to keep it that way. We don't want to set that flow context to run without sharing. But how are users going to be able to create or update records with Salesforce? Essentially, why are we, part of the reason why we're building this form is to create and update records. So how do we give them the ability to do this without exposing our sensitive data, our internal data, to the public? So that's where this multiple flow approach comes in. So we need to build at least 2 flows, one screen flow and one auto launch flow. And so really, this screen flow will be ran as that guest user here, and then through that screen flow, all the guest user will see is that screen, and then we're going to be passing in our variables, that input variables that we collected from the running user, that guest user, and pass it to the auto launch flow through a subflow. Through this subflow, this will be doing most of the heavy lifting within your, within your full-on process. It will be ran in this system context without sharing. Just to level set, if you don't know what I'm talking about with the system context without sharing, there's a little advanced button when you go in and edit a flow in the properties, and you can select how the flow is being ran. So whether that be accessing or ran using the Salesforce sharing models, or be giving access to all data, which again, we don't want to do for guest users. All right, so this backend process is running after that initial screen here, and I'll just show one of the use cases that we did for one of our forms. So if you go onto our Mile High Dreamin' site right now, you'll see a Contact Us form. This is a screen flow, and through that initial screen up top here, no? Okay, cool. All right, so we have here our Contact Us screen, and so that's going to be collecting those inputs. Then we're going to be sending to the subflow. That subflow is going to be taking those input variables, and then now we're on the right side of your screen here with the auto launch flow. This flow will get triggered by the screen flow. Then we can do all the processes we need that the guest user can't make any changes. This is all really back-end processes, or that automation user doing this heavy lifting. So we'll query records, we'll have logic, we'll be creating records, and then this is really cool. So when you go ahead and just giving some background knowledge on our contact form, when you go ahead and submit this contact form, you'll be sent to this action post to Slack, and then we have a separate Slack channel that will be created as a case, and then that link will be posted as an action to Slack. So pretty cool feature. Okay, process runs end to end, we're good. We get sent back to the thank you screen, and the guest is none the wiser. So essentially, just to recap, guest users not having any access to this process on the right side of the screen. All they're seeing is really 2 screens. All right. Okay, shifting gears just a tad bit. All right, have you ever wanted to pre-fill and populate variables in a flow before the user even sees the first screen? And I'll give you one use case that we're using here. So we're sending out emails to, or really links to, a screen flow to confirm speaker agreements. So when a speaker comes on and wants to speak at the event, they just need to click a checkbox and just agree to the terms. So first off, we don't need them to fill in their emails. So what we're going to do, instead of having them manually put in their emails, we can do this by sending an automation or sending this link out with parameters to really pre-fill that email out. Okay, so first off, we're going to define our input variables in our screen flow. So in the use case I'm talking about, I have a flow here, and I want to pre-fill that email. Okay, so when I go ahead and create, it's a little hard to see here, so I apologize. But on this top left side of the screen here, we have our variable that we're creating. I'm assuming most of you have created a variable. Really important that we select the available for input checkbox on that bottom left of that little panel there. Going back to that slide here. Okay, so once we have done and created our variables and selected that it's available for input, okay, we need to make, okay, are we really creating the screen flow to be hosted in an Experience Cloud site, which we are. And so we want to place that flow onto the Experience site canvas, which you're doing here. And then on the right side of the screen here, we're going to be putting our ID or our variable that we created in that last step here, putting it in the curly braces with the exclamation mark to properly name our variable and pass that in. All right, and then for the cool part, in my opinion, so if you are, however you're sending this URL out and to really have the end user navigate to the screen flow that you're creating, whether that be in our use case, we have Pardot forms, or a record triggered flow. I've used this a ton to like use the send email action, and I'll have this URL. And so building this URL out, I have example URL, which is the internal or experience site URL that you are currently, or you want to navigate the users to. Then we're going to add the question mark, and then this is where we're going to be spelling out the parameters. So first off, variable A would be that ID that we named earlier, and then equals the actual value. So this would be the email, this would be the record ID, and you're really putting this and setting this in the record triggered flow, or however you're putting that merge template in initially, and then putting that in the value, and then ampersand, and then you keep going and going. So if there was a second variable, so let's say we had record ID and we had email, we could put in as those fields would be different variables, append it using the ampersand, so on and so forth. So there was a variable C, all we do just ampersand, and then variable C. All right. New topic. So Paul mentioned that we're using multiple experience site templates. So there are 2 templates to choose from. When I first really started and get experimenting with Experience Cloud, I pretty much was just using Aura templates, and that's going to be that standard out of the box that that at least I'm used to. And then one day, someone came up to me and said, hey, let's use the LWR site. I heard it's more customizable. So I did that, and I was just looking at it, I had no idea what this was. Learn more about it, and learn that we were using it for our current site. So the Mile High Dreamin' site that you see today is hosted on the LWR, the Lightning Web Runtime platform. And so let's say you are tasked with building a site for your stakeholders and not really sure which route to choose. So again, we chose the LWR site or template for our main public site because it's more advanced and has better performance overall, like page rendering times. We also had more development time and had developers on staff who knew what they were doing to customize the site. On the other hand, if you're just looking to spin up a site pretty quickly and you don't have a ton of developer experience, Aura might be a good solution for you. So for our use case and what we really built this go-around, we built a portal to rate speaker submissions. And this is a place where volunteers can come in and log in their feedback about the speaker submissions. This portal had a pretty tight turnaround and not too much of a need for heavy customization. Really, we could just drag and drop components onto this site. Overall, Aura is going to be the more traditional approach. It's the more mature Salesforce option. I won't say the LWR. It's still pretty new, and it does have a little bugs from time to time. Aura is going to be that more tried and true method. So if you're looking for a little less headache, Aura might be the best way approach. Might be the best approach for you. I would say also one thing we hit was a big limitation with LWR sites, which is the use of audiences. And for those who don't know audiences or haven't worked with audiences, there are specific user segments that we can assign pages or components to our site. So we don't want everyday Mile Dreaming users to be able to log on to this site. We want specific profiles to be able to log into this site and access it. So this is really only possible with Aura at the moment. I'm sure there's other workarounds like Salesforce in general has. There's always a workaround. Where there's a will, there's a way. But I'd say personally, if you're trying to assign components or specific sites in your Aura or in your experience site, Aura might be the best way to go. But both use cases have a time and a place. I would just say do your research before you're making your full implementation to make sure, to choose the right template for you. But I know I have a bunch of bullets here listed, but this is only a few and the major points that we came across when we were building our site. So this is not going to be the tried and true. Read through a ton of documentation. Not fun, but very important. All right, I'm going to hand it off to someone that's going to wow you about the LWCs that were built for this event. Held it off to Kelly.
For the record, I told Sky not to do that. All right, if you go to our website right now at milehydreamin.com, you will see a couple of Lightning Web Components that are live on the page right now. You can see there are two different versions of our sponsor LWC. The one on the left is on the home page, a little more simple, and the one on the right is the one on the sponsor page where you can really see some more details. So the purpose of these was really to get away from when we had our Wix site, we had a sponsor object in Salesforce that contained all of our sponsor data. But then we had to manually put sponsors, and by we I mean Paul, manually put sponsors on the website, and those really weren't talking to each other. So the purpose of these is really that when we update a sponsor to confirmed in Salesforce, that will automatically push that data to our Lightning Web Component, no more manual updates. Both of these are pulling from the same Apex controller. They were just a little bit different views. And then we also have this Lightning Web Component live on the page or on our website right now. As I'm sure you guys know, we have our Blackthorn app event navigator that's really great to show sessions to anybody who's already registered. But we really wanted to get people who were not registered yet excited about the sessions that we have, and frankly, to let them know that it wasn't just another AI conference. So in order to do that, we built this Lightning Web Component that would, again, pull from our sessions object so that when a session became confirmed, it would show up here. You can see Paul also added some super cool interactivity so that you can filter by role, just see the sessions that apply to your role, or you can search for our super cool session. We had a lot more lessons learned, and by we I mean I in this case, from this one, so I'm going to focus on our sponsor Lightning Web Component. So the first thing we had to figure out was where those sponsor logos should live in Salesforce. I naively suggested that they should just be files, but Paul thankfully corrected me and told me about this thing called CMS Workspaces. If you're not already familiar, this is really a place to store the assets that you need for your experience site. Content housed in those CMS workspaces is called managed content on the back end. Important if you need to build an Apex controller to call those or a Lightning Web Component like I was doing. So we just had a folder in our CMS workspace for our sponsor logos, and then I created a custom field on our sponsor record where we could store that content key so that we could kind of associate a logo with a sponsor record. Fun fact, if you want to bore your partner tonight, those keys are 28 digits, not 18 digits. I know you're riveted. The next step was to figure out how to get that public URL for each logo. So we were assuming that most of the people browsing our website, in fact all right now since we're not using audiences yet, as Sky just mentioned, would be browsing as that public user, so we needed a URL that they could access. This is also how I lost 10 years of my life force, trying to figure out how to get this public URL. So first, as a good developer, I went to the documentation, and I found this fantastic, I thought, site about how to pull literally something called the unauthenticated URL that is described here as public URL for the managed content. Surely that is what I want. It wasn't. So I went to Slack and complained about that. as you can see here in my actual real life post, what it was actually giving me was JSON, and that was not a URL for an image. That did me no good. So after, I did not get a whole lot of responses from my teammates for Slack, I have to say. I learned that what you should actually do when you have a very hard Salesforce problem is just go to Paul Fox. Paul solved this for me. I am saving you 10 years from your life if you're ever going to work with getting image URLs from a CMS workspace. For the love of God, take a picture of this image. If you're never going to do it, this won't do you any good, but I'm going to leave it on the screen for just one more second. Very helpful. All right, after I survived that horrible chapter of my life, I wanted to do something fun. And what I wanted to do was allow us to put in dynamic hex codes or named HTML colors so that if we ever wanted to change how those sponsor LWCs looked on our website, we wouldn't have to go back into the JavaScript or the CSS to actually update anything. I wanted us to be able to do that directly from Experience Cloud. So the solution was to do some color inputs that were available from the site builder. So I'm just going to kind of show you what that looks like. It started my GIF in the middle, so we might have to wait here. Oh, that'll work. So you can see on that right side, and by the way, this would work the same way for a Lightning Web Component in App Builder, so you could do this for something internally as well. You can just put in a hex code of a color or a named HTML color, and because this is a public property that is directly updating the CSS, you can even preview what it will look like inside of the Experience Cloud Builder, which was super cool. One more great tip, by default, any component that's placed inside of a section in Site Builder is not full width, but we wanted those sponsor tier levels to be full width on the website. We just thought it looked better. Super easy to do that, it turns out. We figured that was going to either be something that took 10 years to figure out or a super easy thing. Thankfully, it was the latter. That's all you need. Width is 100 view width, and that will do it for you if you ever want to do the same thing. Next topic we have was testing. It was really important for anything that we built, flows, Lightning Web Components, anything, to test as the guest user. 2 words, incognito mode. I can't tell you how many times I thought I was testing as the guest user, but I was actually logged in as myself in another tab. The only way that I could consistently make sure that I was doing this correctly was just to open an incognito tab. This was my first time working with Experience Cloud, so I learned a lot about guest user permissions. If you're already familiar with Experience Cloud, you probably know this, but anyone browsing the public Experience Cloud site who's not logged in is browsing under a single profile per site. So every site you spin up has a different profile associated with it for the guest user. That sounds really intuitive in retrospect, but at the time, I was trying to work not in our kind of official Experience Cloud sandbox. I was trying to work at the playground one, so I would stay out of everybody's way, and I was so confused why none of my stuff was working. It's because it was a completely different profile. So that profile has to be granted view permissions to view relevant objects and records just like any other profile that you would work with internally. But it is tricky to access that profile. If you go to set up profiles, you're not going to see your profiles for the guest user for experience sites. So this is how you would get to it. Make sure that that checkbox is checked, that guest users can see things, and then you'll have a link to your guest user profile at the bottom there. By the way, this is in settings. I think I skipped past that part. And then that will bring you to the profile page that you know and love from internal users. And finally, we knew that many of our users were looking at the Mile High Dreaming website on their phone, not necessarily their desktop, but of course I was developing from my desktop. So thankfully, Site Builder has a built-in feature so that you can preview what the site looks like as you're building out your flows or Lightning Web Components or anything else on desktop, on mobile, or on tablet. Key tip, don't use developer tools. If you are a coder and you're used to using developer tools, it's a disaster. I don't know what it's doing. Paul can explain better, but use the built-in feature. It works much better. And I'm going to pass it off to Paul for deployments.
All right. we've just got a couple of minutes left, so I'm gonna go kind of quickly through this, but if anybody has any questions or wants to follow up on anything we've done here or talked about, feel free to send me a Slack message or meet me later. So just a couple of things. We started this project with moving our Experience Cloud site that we had started drafting last year to a new org, and that's my first experience basically with deploying Experience Cloud sites, and I immediately hated them. I don't know how many people have gone through the deployment pains of Experience Cloud sites, but it took me 80 test deploys and 2 Salesforce support cases to get that site over, and it was like 10 pages and a couple of components. Like, it wasn't that complicated. So when we started actually working on it, I was like, I got to figure out a better way to do this. So we use simple, free tools. We've got GitHub for the source code. We do small deployments, try and do like 1 page, 1 feature at a time, so that we don't get to this situation where I'm having to like manually recreate pages because Salesforce support says they can't figure out how to deploy it either. Also, backup production, especially if you're an org where people might be making changes to the site in production, just pull down the whole metadata, put it in another like GitHub branch, and then push up your changes just in case you override something, or do a diff and see if you have changes that you need to do. We also did a lot of delta changes, so we didn't deploy the whole site every single time we did a deployment. We would deploy a page or a component or a flow, or sometimes a couple of things. And then, as always, make sure that you preview, publish, and test it. And if you're doing manual changes, do those before you publish your site, because it won't actually show up if you don't publish afterwards. And it's a great time to go in and make sure, like Kelly said, in preview mode, that everything's working correctly. With that said, we have a lot of stuff in store for the future. Currently, this is basically what we have for all of our internal tools that we use to run Mile High Dreamin'. So in the Experience Cloud, we've got the public site that everybody's seen, and then the speaker rating portal. We're hoping to do more logged-in experiences. So that's currently on the plan for next year. And potentially also some work on the apps. We're going back and forth with Blackthorn about what they're doing. The Event Navigator app is new this year. They've got more plans for next year. So we're trying to figure out how all this works together. So if any of this is interesting to you and you want to help out, feel free to send me a Slack message or come up and talk to us about it after the show. But this is basically the plan right now. And our goals with this are to improve collaboration. Obviously, at least in my opinion, the whole reason I go to these events is to meet people, see what other people are building, learn from them. So we want to make that even easier and provide more and more tools to help meet people that can help you with those. We also want people to update their data. One of the biggest things we do as volunteers, which we're doing in addition to our day jobs, is that like updating Salesforce. So when sponsor decides to give us a new logo, or when an attendee, backs out and we need to like cancel and give them a refund, we're doing all these things manually. Even like if a speaker wants to change their session description, we'll go in and change it in Salesforce. So we're hoping to put that in the hands of the speakers and attendees and the sponsors to be able to do that and to give them the tools with the collaboration in the same spot. And then obviously we've got a little disjointed experience this year with like several different apps and Slack and things. So we're gonna hopefully tie those a little bit better, simplify our administration, and hopefully add some fun things. So if you've got any ideas, we would like to know about that. With that being said, I'm going to switch over here. Not that one. All right, so if you want to join that Slido and make some suggestions of what you'd like to see with our event tech next year, there will also be a post-event survey coming out this afternoon and tomorrow, and we do read all those responses. So feel free to let us know what you'd like to see for the tech next year, or any feedback on the conference. By the way, that is also a flow, so if you want to see what Sky was talking about with how we build flows. That's probably one of our biggest ones because it has the most fields, and it's all built securely so you can't see other people's survey responses. Yeah. With that, I think we'll go to questions. Any questions you have about Experience Cloud, your own frustrations? Yeah.
Thanks for all your work on this. And when someone emails info at MHD, were there any automations around that, or was that manual?
So that is now using email to case, but we also just use like a Google shared inbox, which I think is what Chris uses most of the time. Oh, that's right. We just got to get people to use the new email. We went to set up email to case for info at, and we turned out that Chris had signed up for a bunch of subscriptions and various notifications and things like that, and we're like, maybe they shouldn't all go to Salesforce. All right, anybody else? All right, well, once again, just want to thank the team for everything they did this year and everything they're going to do next year.